So, do any other members seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman,
The chair recognizes Mr. Mfume from Maryland.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will distribute the amendment to all the members. Do all members have a copy of the Mfume amendment? The clerk will designate the amendment.
An amendment to the rules of the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform for the 119th Congress is offered by Mr. Mfume of Maryland.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I reserve a point of order. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member. This amendment, I believe, strongly helps the Oversight Committee maintain the order, reasonableness, and intellectual honesty for which we have been known for many, many years as a committee for, both in the Congress and more broadly in the minds of many of the American people. Specifically, my amendment would preserve the jurisdictional authority of the Subcommittee on Government Operations and Federal Workforce in the current Congress from what it was in the previous Congress by merging the Government Operations Subcommittee and the newly fashioned Delivering on Government Efficiency Subcommittee in the 119th Congress. As an initial matter, Mr. Chairman, I call our attention to the fact that this committee operated in the 118th Congress, also with 5 subcommittees, yet the proposed rules before us today would expand that number to 7 subcommittees. In an age where government efficiency is the mantra, it appears that we're doing exactly what we say the federal government should not do, growing in size and creating unnecessary overlapping bureaucracy. As a point of personal privilege, Mr. Chairman, I served as ranking member on the Government Operations and Federal Workforce Subcommittee in the previous Congress. And thanks to a very healthy working relationship with Subcommittee Chairman, the distinguished gentleman from Texas, Mr. Sessions, we were together able to repeatedly go after the bad guys, the swindlers, the fraudsters, and the crooks, and in the process analyze many of the underlying causes for improper payments in federal government programs that were draining American citizens of hundreds of millions of dollars and depriving many of our poor citizens from some of the basic things they need because oftentimes the money had been taken out, swindled, and stolen. Likewise, we were able to address backlogs and delays at federal agencies, including within the Department of Defense, and we've had a healthy working relationship with a number of inspector generals who were part and parcel of the work of that committee and very much responsible for not only finding the bad guys, but also moving toward conviction of many of them. So forgive me if I find it not genuine to pretend that the pursuit of government efficiency is new. We've been doing that, and we've been doing it year after year. Likewise, forgive me if I find it not genuine also to divest the Subcommittee on Government Operations and Federal Workforce of all of its jurisdictional rights. And when I say all, I mean some of the most important ones, particularly the oversight of federal employees. Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member, I believe each one of us know that on both sides of the aisle, in our heart of hearts, American campaigns and American elections are in peril because of money. I would offer also that our government is in peril but because of money, but money going the wrong way, from where it's supposed to go to people who have devised all sorts of schemes to get around that and who are making fortunes off of money intended to help the American public. So I just believe that this situation we have really calls for the merger of these committees, not the separation of them. And as I said before, not the growth from 5 until 7. So I would urge members of the committee to consider that, consider the work that we've been doing in that subcommittee, to consider the fact that these 2 committees should have joint oversight and be combined. And I would urge its passage and yield back without objection, Mr. Chair, to you and to the ranking member for any additional or concluding remarks.
Thank you. Gentleman yields back. I'll recognize myself for 5 minutes. And I agree with what you said, Mr. Mfume, the great work that Chairman Sessions and you did on the Government Ops Committee. There's not 2 finer members of this committee than you 2. We're going to be very busy this Congress. And I think that the difference in this Congress and last Congress is that I hope we have an administration that's more forthcoming, that is more transparent, that is more willing to provide us documents, receipts, and any type of information we need to do our job to make government more efficient. And if that's the case, we're going to be using a lot of subcommittees to do a lot of work. We believe that if you look at the current level of bureaucracy, the current level of spending, the current level of the lack of efficiency from what we're going to be talking about tomorrow in our hearing, government employees not coming to work, I think that we've got a lot of work to do. The Government Operations Subcommittee will still be the top subcommittee on this committee, but we're going to have 2 additional subcommittees as well, because we believe there's going to be a huge portfolio of oversight for us to conduct this session, and we want to have as many members of this committee participating and working to try to achieve our goal of making government more efficient. And you mentioned something that I think this committee did a great work, Chairman Sessions, and your work, improper payments. We want to really focus on that, and hopefully we can come up with some solutions and get some clawbacks on these improper payments. So I am confident the Government Operations Subcommittee is going to be busier than ever with Chairman Sessions, and we'll have 2 additional subcommittees that will have a full platter as well. With that, I'll conclude my remarks. Chair recognizes Ranking Member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I enthusiastically support the amendment offered by Mr. Mfume of Maryland. I believe that in this reorganization, the rules we're considering today, we are gutting the primary jurisdiction of the Government Operations Committee and devolving a lot of it to this new subcommittee. To me, the logic is, why not merge the 2, as Mr. Mfume is proposing, and get on with the business of that transparency you talk about. I sure hope the chairman is right, that we're going to be ushering in a world of accountability and transparency with the second Trump administration. However, early signs are not encouraging. The world's richest man donated $277 million, $250 million, to President-elect Trump and congressional Republicans just last year. In return, he's getting, among other things, I'm sure, his own entity to gut the federal government of its ability to work for the people who need it. What could go wrong? Remember, he talked about cutting $2 trillion. What could go wrong with handing the reins of the federal government to a billionaire oligarch who sees no use for government except for his own purposes in the first place? He doesn't rely, and nor do his cronies, on Social Security checks when they retire, and they have no problem cutting Social Security as a result. They do not have to worry about a spouse losing his or her job, or the family needing to go on food stamps so they can take nutritional support from a federal government that's so important to them. They don't know, those oligarchs, what the anxiety is of a family farmer who has a drought or a hailstorm. Cutting crop insurance is no skin off their backs. I think holding people accountable is an absolutely noteworthy goal. I think we could start with the DOGE process and Mr. Ramaswamy and Mr. Elon Musk. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes Ms. Green from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would also like to commend Chairman Sessions for the good work that he's done on government ops. I think that's been great. However, our current state of affairs is we are $36 trillion in debt. Congress cannot have enough committees on oversight to look at cutting the ridiculous amount of spending, waste, fraud, and abuse from the federal government. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to chair the subcommittee on DOGE. Also, I don't think that we should be shaming people for success in this country, as we're hearing from the ranking member today. You know, success is something every single American strives for, and we want to do everything we can to make sure that Americans can be successful. And in doing so, cutting the ridiculous amount of spending that has carried on for decades here in Washington, D.C. is one of the most important steps that we can take as members of Congress in ensuring that the American people are successful. And doing that, we can get them and hopefully dig them out of this grave of debt, which is $36 trillion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Any members? Mr. Frost from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I just want to point out, you know, we just heard someone say that we can't have enough committees to look into government efficiency. But if you know anything about efficiency, you can't have too many committees doing the same exact thing. It's almost as inefficient as having two co-directors of a fake Department of Government Efficiency. And so if we want to be serious about this, which I'm very skeptical that folks are, I agree with this amendment on combining these committees, subcommittees that would essentially do the same thing, help us consolidate government resources and spend less, which is supposedly what you care about. And so I'm in support of this amendment, and I also would yield some time, if he wants, to my friend Dave Min.
Yep, so you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to associate myself with the comments of my colleague from Maryland. I want to thank him for bringing this amendment forward. Look, we all know that Doge was started as the original meme coin, and this particular subcommittee that's being proposed feels a lot like a meme subcommittee. We're a serious body. I'm honored to be here, but I think we have to take the business of oversight and accountability seriously. I think political stunts, which is what this looked like, are really not appropriate. So I'll yield back the remainder of my time.
All right, gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes Mr. Biggs from Arizona.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Of course, I propose this amendment. It is dripping with TDS, dripping with TDS. This is the crap that goes on from the other side. The fact that you would say, oh, my gosh, we're going to talk about Donald Trump and hassle him. I mean, that you talk about cooperation, oh, lovey-dovey, let's unify, and then you just spit all over a fairly rational move, which is to divide a subcommittee up to actually go after specific items while the other one's going after broader items. And Chairman Sessions did a great job, $1.7 trillion of improper payments over 3 years. Wonder where that came from. From the same guys who were criticizing wanting to look at DOGE more specifically. Mr. Chairman, this is what you get. They want you to feel good and join their hand in hand and walk along with them while they want you close enough so they can stab you in the back. I'm an absolute no on this. I wish that I felt there was some sincerity to work together, but there is none. It's
Would the gentleman yield?
It's perfectly clear in the comments of the ranking member that we just heard, and I'll yield to the chairman.
Do any other members seek recognition? Chair recognizes Ms. Mace. Ms. Stansberry from New Mexico.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, obviously, if the stated purpose of the DOGE subcommittee is to promote government efficiency, wouldn't we also want government efficiency here in Congress? I think that is what Mr. Mfume is trying to achieve with this amendment, and with that, I yield the remainder of my time to him to explain.
I thank the gentlewoman for yielding. Unless I have a different set of ears to the gentleman who raised this very strong objection, I don't think I ever mentioned the word Donald Trump or Elon Musk or anything else. So I'm not over here playing games. I'm too old to be playing games. And I think as long as we try to conduct ourselves with some sense of dignity without being so upset that you point to the person who made the amendment with accusations that are untrue, that's not playing.
Will the gentleman yield?
After I make my point, yes, I'll be more than happy to yield. I'm just saying if we're going to have a bipartisan relationship here, which is what Mr. Sessions and I had as we chaired and co-chaired that committee and came up with all of those savings in dollars, It was because we took time to recognize the dignity of both sides and the right to disagree in a very agreeable sort of way. So when you make those accusations about me, sir, go back and look at what I said in the introduction of this amendment, and you will see that you were clearly off mark, and I will yield.
Thank you. Yes, you and Mr. Sessions worked together. I did not make comments to you. I specifically mentioned the ranking member. I'll yield back.
Chair recognizes Ms. Mace.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't think we should be taking the advice from a group of people who can't define what a woman is. You certainly can't define what government efficiency is. So let's just start right there, Mr. Chairman. I support the subcommittee, the creation of the subcommittee on DOGE. I wildly support Marjorie Taylor Greene as the subcommittee chairwoman. And again, to the party who says we don't like or support women, well, guess what? We have 2 women on this committee who are subcommittee chairwomen who carry gavels. And we're working for the President of the United States, the President who made the first female chief of staff ever in the history of the United States. And I also want to correct the record of the ranking member earlier. There's no Republican up here who has cut Social Security. That is a lie. That is a lie being promulgated by the left, aided and abetted by the mainstream media, and all those liars out there on social media on the left saying that is not true. And when we want to talk about oligarchy, we had Joe Biden, we had Nancy Pelosi, we had Chuck Schumer controlling everything on the Hill in the Capitol for years. And guess what? They've all delivered. They delivered the worst economy in history for Donald Trump. They have delivered more terrorists coming across the southern border than any administration in history. And so this subcommittee is greatly needed, Mr. Chairman. I hope that we all support it unanimously. Ms. Greene, you're going to do a great job as subcommittee chairwoman. I would love to be waved on anytime you let me, because it's time that we stop wasting American taxpayers. It is time that we stop wasting time up here on the Hill. We stop wasting time here in Congress talking about BS. And someone brought up dignity earlier. I would love to see dignity and respect for women up here on the Hill, which is why we should ban men from women's spaces, which is why we should ban men from the locker rooms, from women's locker rooms, which is why we should ban men from women's dressing rooms. I'm done with this. We got to get back to common sense. We got to get back to fighting and working hard for the American people, and we've got to do it together. So you guys can talk all you want on the left side of the aisle. You're not going to be successful because there was a mandate in November, the most historic mandate by Donald John Trump. And the American people want us to get our stuff together. Notice how I'm not cursing today. They want us to get our stuff together and work for the American people. And that starts now. That can start with the DOGE subcommittee. That can start with every committee on the Hill today if we put in the effort and the work to do it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Anybody? Chair? Ms. Crockett? Chair recognizes Ms. Crockett.
I'm so glad that we could finally end that nice little propaganda commercial break. Listen, I don't know what Ms. Mace was talking about. I thought we were talking about government efficiency. And the last time that I checked, this committee in the 118th, just like in the 119th, has been governed by the Republicans. Chairman, is it not true that you were the chairman in the 118th? You were. Okay, so the Republicans have controlled this committee. So my question is, why is it that you need to create an entirely new subcommittee when you literally could go through and do whatever work it is that you're talking about handing over to the gentle lady who has never seemingly brought up anything about efficiency? The only thing I recall from the 118th was her spending a lot of time on somebody's junk in this committee. So let me be clear. Y'all had a chance, you chose not to use it, so why should the American people be convinced that now all of a sudden, because you create a new committee that has been promulgated by a real oligarch, you're talking about Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, they were actually duly elected, not somebody sitting there buying Twitter and just happened to be the richest person in the world telling y'all what to do. Let me tell you something. y'all need to find some people that actually care about their constituents. And honestly, whenever y'all are ready to work, we on this side of the aisle have always been ready to do what is right by the American people. Instead, what you can continue to do is go after the most vulnerable in our country. The fact that you just sat up there and somehow figured out how to tie trans folk to your argument makes no sense to me. But let me tell you something. Trans people ain't going nowhere, just like when the racists wanted to make sure that black people somehow were going to be dismissed in this country. We ain't left either. And I'll yield.
Would you yield back?
I'll yield to the gentleman from Florida.
I just want to say one thing, and I hope everyone's listening, because there's something one of our colleagues just said that I actually think is true. It was a lot of lies, but there's something I think is true. And it's when they said that they work for Donald Trump. Last Congress, no Democrat on this committee worked for Joe Biden. We work for our constituents, and we worked with Joe Biden. That right there shows why this committee and this subcommittee is being proposed. It has nothing to do with your constituents, nothing to do with government efficiency, and has to do with your boss, not the people who elected you, but Donald Trump, and then his boss, Elon Musk. I yield back.
The next is Mr. Cloud, but before I recognize, okay, Mr. Gosar will be next. Before I recognize Mr. Gosar, I just want to make the point, the number of Oversight Committee staffers is the same regardless of how many subcommittees there are. The budget for the Oversight Committee is the same regardless of how many subcommittees there are. So it doesn't add to any cost. We're just trying to do more work to get more, to help make government more efficient. Chair recognizes Mr. Gosar from Arizona.
Yeah, to the ranking member on the subcommittee from Illinois. I think there's a lot of merit to this because the problems are so great. They're from both sides. The spending has got to stop. There's no way we can continue on this trajectory. So I think if this subcommittee has one mission only, I think it's important for us all to call into question. I think that they ought to be that specific because that's how big the problem is, folks. We have spent $12 trillion since Bill Clinton was in office on emergencies that have, we don't have a single receipt for it, folks. That isn't a Republican problem. That's not a Democratic problem. It's a us problem. So I would hope that we would keep this committee just to do that. And I hope they come up with a great cut because I got to tell you, we got to get to something solvency here. Folks, our biggest debt is our biggest problem. We got to start finding some efficiencies. And so I commend the chairman for putting this committee together, and I want to see some results. I really want to see some results because we can't continue as a country of our statute with this kind of debt. I yield back to this.
Gentleman yields back. Any other members seek recognition? You. Chair recognizes Mr. Cloud, and then Mr. Fallon's next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's been talk about the danger of a duplicity in having two committees working on reining in federal spending, and I assure you the danger of duplicity isn't in too many members in Congress working on finding savings for the American people. That's almost a comical thinking. The danger of duplicity lies squarely in the bureaucracy that is way outgrown its authority, way outgrown its mandate, has become a bastion of waste, fraud, abuse, error, and a heavy burden on the American people. And as far as Congress goes, we've gotten by for far too long somehow justifying our worth on how much money we send things versus whether or not those programs and those initiatives are actually accomplishing the purpose they were sent to be funded with and what the American people want. And the American people have spoken very clearly on this. It's not like the DOGE effort and those ideas were somehow a secret thing that was hidden in the campaign season. It's something President Trump talked about. It's something many members here talked about. And it's something the American people decided overwhelmingly that they wanted to see leading this next season in our country's life. And so this is something we should do. It's something that the American people have asked us to do. And frankly, something that should be bipartisan. The waste, fraud, and abuse that have grown over time is an issue. Right now, we are one of the national security existential threats against our country is our fiscal responsibility. Right now, with what's happening with interest rates, we are looking at spending another $50 billion just in interest costs. next year. That helps no one, whatever side of the aisle you're on or whatever you want to accomplish. And so we've got to bring our fiscal house in order. We've got to put this country back on fiscal footing, and we've got to return a good ROI to the American people. These are all the objectives of the DOGE initiative. I applaud the chairman in setting up this committee and look forward to the work and the great work that will be done on it. And thank you, Chairman. I yield back to the chairman.
Yields back. Any other members seek recognition? Chair recognizes Mr. Fallon from Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, we had somebody on the other side of the aisle condemn propaganda, and then you hear people go on to say that they didn't work for Joe Biden, they worked with Joe Biden. Yet they held Joe Biden's water for those 2 years, and many people on the other side of the aisle protected his son when he certainly didn't deserve any protection whatsoever, and he was actually convicted and committed felonies that he was convicted of real felonies, not fairy tale made up lawfare felonies. So we work for the American people. We're accused just now of not working or caring for the American people either. Well, the American people in November, 5 million more of them voted for Republican candidates for Congress than they did Democrats. That is a clear mandate that the American people do not agree with that sentiment whatsoever. And then when you talk about DOGE, my colleague just said, Mr. Cloud, $800 billion plus has been burned and wasted on paying interest on the debt itself. This is an existential threat to our country. Democrats and Republicans should be joining hands on DOGE and not criticizing with viciousness a committee that has never even met yet. How dare you, Marjorie Taylor Greene? What are you doing? You're doing a horrible job, not even having done your job yet because we didn't give you a chance to. So how about being fair arbiters and saying, you know what? Maybe this committee could work, and maybe you can save your criticism for when they actually meet and see how they do and how they perform. That's like saying someone's a terrible hitter before they've ever gotten to the plate. And then I guess we're going to hear for the next 2 years about Elon Musk. Every time you hear his name, hateful oligarch. You can just mark it down now how many times we're going to hear it. The over-under is about, I'd say, 9,000. I yield back.
Do any other members seek recognition? Seeing none. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Mfume. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying no. No. In the opinion of the chair.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
The,
Mr. Mfume.
Mfume.
Yeah, request a recorded vote.
The recorded vote is ordered as previously announced. Further proceedings on the question will be postponed. And I must admit, I just got a message that the tremendous 1980s technology in this committee room does not work, and we're going to have to do that all by voice vote instead of the electronic. But we'll suffer through it.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Just a quick point of personal
Yes, sir.
privilege
Yes,
for
sir.
clarification and for the record, so that we're not lost on this, and the record reflects that this amendment was not getting rid of any committee. It was combining two committees so that they would have joint jurisdiction over finding ways to eliminate the debt and to eliminate the problems that we have seen. So let's keep it for what it is, not for what people think it is. And that's why I want to get back again to the way that it was read into the record deliberately as an effort to combine, not to do away with. I yield back, and I thank you.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose do you seek recognition? Ms. Stansberry?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment at the desk.
Will the clerk please report the amendment? Or the clerk distribute the amendment? Everyone have the amendment, the Stansberry amendment?